Hello, everybody. This is Eric Apricot, and today I have a special guest, Marc Campbell, who is an NBA analyst, an NBA shooting coach for 6 years, an ex-pro player in Europe, and 2009 NCAA champion. Thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is great. What an intro.
Marc has been an NBA shooting coach for past 6 years, and your first client was Malik Beasley, and in the summer of 2018, you had over 48 on-court sessions with him. And the next season, he showed a lot of improvement. He went from 34% three-point shooting to 40%. He went from 28 threes in the season to leading the team, the Nuggets, with 163 threes. And he's progressed enough that by this year, 2025, he could declare himself the best shooter in the world, which means he must have had the best shooting coach in the world. What has it been like watching Malik Beasley's ascent?
Malik doesn't lack for confidence. So hearing that quote from him is not ultra shocking. He's a very confident guy. So I worked with Malik for 2 full years. So 2 off seasons, 2 seasons. And when I work with guys, I work primarily like a 12-month cycle. So I'll watch all of their stuff prior. Then we'll put a plan together and go through what we're going to do in the off season. And then during the season, I'll do film with them throughout the year, prior to games, after stuff, like to make sure that we're kind of keeping the through line and the thread of what we planned out and what's coming together and things like that. So I did 2 full years with him. They were my first 2 in terms of working with an NBA guy. You know, I had played a high level of basketball, but it was my first time working with somebody that was playing 82 games, somebody that was going through, contract stuff where somebody had just gotten paid above you and working with an agent, talking with people within the team. It was a huge, huge learning experience for me. And I was really grateful for the trust from his team, but more so him to lean into what we were doing because it was something new for me that I had never done. It was exciting to see the project take off, like to see him make the jump from, 3 points to 11 and 28 threes to 163. And then the next year to see it go through contract negotiations of restricted free agency and how that affects your playing time when you don't take a deal. And then to see him get dealt in a new situation in Minnesota, it was a really cool learning experience.
Since you've been in the belly of the beast of player development, some people criticize Steve Kerr fairly or not fairly for not being able to develop players. How much credit or blame do you think a head coach should get for a player's development on their team?
Every situation is different. So, you can't put Steve Kerr, Jordi Fernandez in Brooklyn and, Mike Malone in the same bucket in terms of player development, because with Jordi Fernandez in Brooklyn, like anything goes right now. So like Denver and Golden State, they have a center of the wheel. They have a North Star in terms of the way that they're going to play. So development isn't just this thing that exists where anything is development. Like you need to develop in a specific way where you fit to this North Star and how this North Star moves in terms of what actions they create for themselves and what rotations those create with the team around you. And so a lot of times there's, you take Cam Thomas, for instance, in Brooklyn. A lot of people would say like, oh my God, that's incredible development. Like, look at what he's done. He's averaging this, he's averaging that. And like, you look at the actions, but those actions are different than say a player on Denver who would be playing off of Jokic's actions, and different than a player on Golden State who would be playing off of Curry's actions. Now there's a lot of like nuance within that, but the teams that have these North Star types players, these center of the wheel, development is more about like, how do you fit off of their advantages and what do you do that also amplifies a little bit of stuff for them. So it's very different. I think it's probably a little bit too harsh to criticize Steve Kerr about development, because a lot of the times it's really like, there's plenty of opportunity out there. It's just that we are not going to prioritize like, you want to go play ISO ball, and if you think that's development, you want these, you're not going to get that. And you're not going to get these reps with the ball in your hand, because like we have a certain way that we're going to play. Development is learning how to play off of that style.
Right along the lines of what you're saying, Steve Kerr very recently said that the reason Jonathan Kuminga wasn't getting minutes was because the team had to play around Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler, and he didn't want Kuminga taking touches away from those guys, basically. And
Yeah.
so JK had to do all the other stuff that would complement their games, like rebound, defend like crazy, run the floor, and finish in transition. And that Kuminga wasn't exactly embracing that role. So I'm going to throw you into the fire a little bit. I know you haven't had time to properly do a whole scouting report on Jonathan Kuminga, but do you have thoughts about what Kuminga's epicenter would be and how he could improve his game?
So when I work with a guy, I like to create their plan. I'll do a SWOT analysis, but the main thing is you try to find a player's epicenter. And a lot of times I call it like their floor skill. What is the thing that got you drafted? What is the thing that immediately everybody was like, this skill can translate and be an NBA skill. Like it can move up levels of athleticism. It will be able to exist in the NBA, and this will be the thing that you'll play off of. So for Malik, for example, like the epicenter of his game was going to be his shooting. And then that's the floor skill. Like the better he could get at that, then everything else was going to domino from there. So if his shooting got great, the closeouts would get longer and more out of control, and then he could get downhill and use athleticism to finish. And then the next iteration of that will be once you can get downhill, now it's about reading, help, and playmaking. So everything kind of dominoes, and it all dominoes from what your epicenter is going to be as a player and how to make that the strongest possible strength in your game and then play from those advantages. So, and then it also matters of like, if you're a spoke on the wheel, like how does that fit into the center of the wheel, and what actions are you going to get? So like Malik's were DHOs with Jokic. They were spot up actions off of help and rotation. His actions within his epicenter where he was going to have to be great. So if you think about Kuminga and if you think about the Warriors, well, Steph exists and Steph plays on ball and off ball, but most of the times you're going to get situations where Steph is going to bring two players to the basketball, whether he's running off a screen or coming off a ball screen. And you're going to get these opportunities where there's going to be times to cut to the basket and finish. There's going to be times where you're going to spot up or move to space and drift into actions, be able to catch and shoot. And then there's going to be times where you're going to do that and guys are going to close out hard and you're going to get downhill and it's either going to be finish or play make. So that's the role that Jonathan Kuminga has to walk into. And the first step of that is in here, like in your head, in your heart, in your mind, like understanding that's the way that I need to play on this team, because this is the way this team is going to play. And a lot of the guys that play in the NBA, like Kuminga has probably been the best player on every single team he's been on. So that's a role that he hasn't, emotionally accepted in terms of like ever before he got to the Warriors ever. Because the ball is like, okay, Jonathan, what do you like to do? Okay, you get the ball here, or you drive here. Like everything's been like off of his action. So that's a huge step initially, even like mentally, to realize like this is how it works now. Now, what I see from him is in these actions, the first thing that you're going to do is his athleticism and getting downhill is his epicenter. Like he's a phenomenal athlete. He's an incredible finisher when he has rhythm, balance, and he can transition his power up. So if I'm a defense, my first thing is like, well, I'm definitely not going to close out hard. Like he's going to have to be able to shoot the ball. And usually what you're going to have to do, like Malik, for instance, guys weren't closing out hard. They were like, you're going to have to prove that you can really shoot it to get us to like do that. And then you can play off it. So for Kuminga, like the shooting it's not good enough. And because it's not good enough, it makes everything else more compressed because he'll drive into actions that should be shot. Or if he shoots it, he's not shooting it at a high enough clip where you can flip the closeouts from short to long. And so when I watch him play, like that's the biggest thing that holds him back is the shooting isn't good enough. The mechanics aren't good enough. The shot is not connected. And then it makes everything else harder because you're playing from behind the eight ball. You're driving when you should be shooting. You're trying to overpower guys that you can't overpower because you don't have the angle initially, and everything dominoes, but not in a good way, in a bad way. And so when you think about development for him and development on this team, like that's the epicenter. If his game was going to unlock where he could get to his biggest strengths, it was going to be where he was going to be able to shoot the ball well enough to flip those closeouts from short closeouts to long closeouts.
Is this something you can see on tape? Like, do you see some things about his shot that he can improve?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be very good at it if I couldn't.
So I'm not a shot doctor. So like I see him shoot. It looks pretty smooth. It looks kind of repeatable. It looks kind of unbalanced. All right. That kind of looks like a shot. So you see it 10 times deeper than that.
So I've worked with quite a few players. I worked with a lot of players in the league, and none of them have ever improved less than 6 percentage points on their three.
Wow.
So I feel comfortable looking at a shot and understanding how it works. I understand how that machine works. I understand how it functions. I understand where the power needs to come from.
Okay.
So do you know the concept of kinetic linking? The best I've ever heard it explained is a Mike Tyson uppercut. So the power from Mike Tyson's uppercut does not come from his arm. He kinetically links it from the floor through his feet, through his hips, and then up through his arm. And so shooting a basketball is no different. It's an exercise in kinetic linking. And the better you can link the power from the floor through your hips and then out through the basketball, the better you're going to be able to shoot the ball. And so with every single client I worked with, that's the biggest thing we're driving towards is smooth kinetic linking. We want to load the power in the right places, and we want to just let the power transition out. So when I watch Jonathan Kuminga's shot, his power is detached. And what I mean by detached is it's not linking from the floor through his hips and then up through the basketball. He's getting the ball to a set point, and now the ball is here and the power is down here. And it's like almost like a pinball machine where you're holding it down. The ball is not going down with the pin thing to explode out. It's just meeting it at the top and then trying to bump it out. So there's a huge disconnect in terms of the linking of the power. And if you watch his shot, I'll send you a few clips because I downloaded them. If you watch a shot, the biggest thing is if you watch the top of his hand on a shot, he's a righty. When he pulls the ball up, his hand is on top of the ball. So anytime, if I'm going to link power up and through, my hand has to be under the ball, driving up together. Anytime I'm pulling the ball up to here, none of this power is linked. And now I'm just going to slingshot it. So that's when a shot isn't linked together. I've worked with a ton of guys that have had that problem. You got to go back, way back, down to the studs and get down to where your feet are and where you're loading power and how you're linking power. And if you don't do that, anything else you do is just cosmetic. It's like lipstick on a pig. Like it's not going to matter. And so when I watch him shoot, that's the biggest difference. And that's why you get, I watched 100 shots today. You could see him swish a shot. You could see him shoot it 3 feet short, and you can watch him shoot it 5 feet long, all within 4 or 5 shots. And so that's the consistency of when you've linked this power together properly and it's really repeatable. It's repeatable in an NBA game at NBA speed, not in a gym by yourself. And so that's when I watch his shot, like if you're pulling the ball up, you're never going to be able to get it to be repeatable at this speed that the game happens.
So now I'm really pushing the hypotheticals. How long do you think it would take him to improve his shot?
It depends on so many things. Am I working with him? There's the first thing that's going to be like the biggest deal when we get into the gym, because you look at him, he's incredibly athletic. So I'm already going in assuming like he's going to be able to pick up on a lot of things we're doing really quickly because his body moves in a nice movement pattern. Like he's got great stacking habits. So like I'm already thinking it's going to be okay. The first thing that's going to matter is, do you have any ankle impingements? Because if you have problems in your ankle, that means that you can't flex them to the point where we're going to be able to get them to load power down and we're going to be able to drop our hips. If you have bad ankles, if you have ankle impingements, your ankles are going to be stuck and now our hips aren't going to be able to load properly where we can link everything together. So then it's going to take longer. We can still get there, but it's going to take twice the amount of time. Malik had no ankle impingements, great hips. So like Malik, we're talking about this is 30 sessions and it's like, bam, just firing all cylinders. I've worked with other guys where they did have ankle impingements and now we're talking about 70, 80 sessions. Like, takes a lot longer because you don't get to go through basically like a through line shortcut. You got to go around, you got to take this road up here, you got to take this road here. Like you got to do it a little bit differently, but he's athletic enough and, if he was really invested, I don't know, 35, 40 sessions max.
So if it was 80, could you get that done in the summer?
80 is a lot. 80 is a lot in the summer. Like people want to enjoy their summer. You don't work for the team. You don't have access like that. Like, if you're with a team, sure, you might be able to get 80 sessions in, but also like, I like to think about the way that I do a session. I don't charge people by a session. We're not going in there as like, you need to feel like you're doing it. Some sessions we might shoot 400 shots. We might never leave the free throw lane. We might be within 8 to 15 feet the whole time because we're working on very specific habits. It's like a Rolex. You have all of these small pieces, 1,000 pieces within the Rolex, all working in unison. And a shot is no different. It's all these simple machines all working in unison, firing at the same time. So there are some days you might have to go in there and you just break the whole thing apart and you want to sharpen each piece, and then you put it back together. You want to sharpen it, put it back together. So some days are going to be different. You can't just be like, oh, we're going to get 80. And you don't know what the guy's mental disposition is going to be either. Like, is he going to be all in? Is he going to be ready for that tedious type stuff? Or is he going to be like, man, bump this?
People talk about his athleticism as just like something he has. He was born with it and he just doesn't have to work on it. But I feel like he probably does have to maintain it and work out in certain ways to keep in shape in certain ways, and maybe even continue to develop his explosiveness, etc. And so is it fair to say that working on maintaining his athleticism may take away time from working on his shot? Is there a conflict of finite resources, or do you feel like, no, he could work on all that stuff?
No, think of it as an iPhone or a computer or something like that. Your athleticism is your hardware. So, and all your skill, like shooting or ball handling or anything, that's the software. Those are the iOS updates. So like your hardware can only get so much better. Like it's not going to improve in terms of the same like rapid rate that you can improve software. You can always be improving software at a higher rate because there's more ceiling to go into. Your hardware can only get so much better. Your athleticism can only get so much better. It's a raw ability. It's a raw thing. But translating that athleticism onto a court, translating it is not just your athletic, here you go. Like you guys just played the Rockets. The Thompson twins they're top end athletes, 99th percentile athletes. And there are times where that athleticism just like overpowers. But there's also times where that athleticism gets curtailed a little bit because the skill isn't enough to extend the defense. It's not enough to create enough room to let that athleticism fly. It's where you have to be trying to overpower defenses as opposed to getting an angle early and then letting your athleticism take you home. With Kuminga, like the athleticism that he has, even if he didn't improve it at all over the offseason, but he just improved shooting, ball handling, these things, it would unleash a different level of athleticism because the defensive schematics would change around him. His rhythm and balance would be very different. Like the places where he would be able to unleash that athleticism would increase as opposed to where they're at now.
Okay, so is there a conflict then between, say, working on his handle versus working on his shot?
So the way that I taught shooting was through ball handling. I don't want to go like too deep into this, but basically like when you're on a basketball court, there are 5 to 6 movements. I call them stacking movements where they exist in everything that you do, whether it's coming off a pick and roll, spot up shooting, coming off ball screens, isolation stuff, and it's all just ball handling and shot prep footwork. And these same body movements exist. So the way that I would try to do these things is we talked about, breaking up the Rolex, basically taking the ball handling, and I call these drills building shots. And so they would be the beginning of every single workout. And so it's basically you just break apart the Rolex for 30 minutes, 35 minutes every single day, and you sharpen it. And then when you put it back together, and when you get into the workout, there should be no thought about, oh, I'm trying to do this or I'm trying to do this. You just let the habits turn into instincts. And every single day you come in, you sharpen those habits, and you back into the workout, you let their habits turn into instincts. And so the ball handling aspect and the building shots, like those habits, they're going to translate into the game. It's just about making sure you only get a finite amount of time. It's making sure that you're actually focused on the habits that will translate into instincts out there.
All right. Okay, so if it's okay with you, I'm going to give Jonathan Kuminga your number.
Yeah.
We'll see what we can get done.
There's a Warriors contingent from their front office that subscribes to low man help. There's one or two of their coaches on the coaching staff, but no, they've never called. They've never asked about anything to do with Kuminga. So no, you're probably barking up the wrong tree.
They're dropping the ball on this. So yeah, Jonathan Kuminga, honestly, I think if the Warriors can find a sign and trade, they're going to do it. So maybe I want to talk about someone else. You mentioned you looked at Brandin Podziemski's shot as well.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have thoughts on Brandin and how he can improve?
Yeah, not so much thoughts about how he can improve or not improve. What we just talked about with Kuminga and pulling the ball up, you don't see that with Podziemski. Like he has a really nice link of his lower body to his upper body. It's connected together. He has great shot prep footwork. He moves into space really well. A lot of times makes and misses in the NBA happen before the ball even gets to you. I call it WIMS, WIMS, where is my space? So whims and shot prep footwork, those two things matter so much in the NBA because if you're moving into the right space at the right time, then most likely you're going to be in rhythm and on balance to catch the ball with great shot prep footwork. And Podziemski does a wonderful job of, he reads the game really well. He understands where passing lanes are, where he'd be moving, and his shot prep footwork is really good. So for him, I think there are times where like the feet do let him down a little bit. Like he's not like 99th percentile. Like Steph's footwork is incredible of like shot prep. So he's not at that level. Like he's somewhere in like the 70th percentile in the league, but still like really good. I would say like there's not a lot of mechanical things from the upper body or the release that you would say like we need to get in there and dig into. It would be just about like sharpening the feet, especially when you're small and you're not on the top end of athlete. But like even if you are, you just want this no matter what. You want your feet to be daggers. Like you want them to be able to cut through anything in the league. Because if your feet are great, you're going to be able to get good angles. You're going to be able to get to space. You're going to be able to load power. So for him, it would be all about just sharpening the feet and making sure that every single time his shot prep footwork was as crisp as possible. Every single time when he's handling, he's creating the best angles. Like every single time your hips are going to follow your toes, that his toes are aligned where his hips can follow the power. So it wouldn't be super mechanical for him. It would definitely be more a focus on like your feet have to be absolute daggers and they've got to be so sharp that nothing else matters. Like you can get to anywhere you want. That's all that shooting is. Truly, it really is. When you shoot, you can't be thinking. And if you're thinking, you're going to miss it. If you're trying to aim the ball, if you're trying to do anything, it's impossible. And so the more you can focus on doing the work early through your movement or shot prep or anything that has to do with your feet, the more you give yourself a chance to not think about what you're doing. You just let everything react. We talk about habits turning into instinct. You have to be the white noise, right? You have to be nothing in here, and you have to let everything that happens before be the stuff that you're leaning into.
This whole thing about white noise and having this shooter's blank mind just reminds me of Buddy Hield. I'm a pretty big Buddy Hield fan relative to a lot of Warrior fans. He's inconsistent, but it's hard to tell whether it's just three-point shooting is inconsistent or whether he's really inconsistent. People are always saying, hey, if Buddy doesn't have it going, just bench his ass. And I'm wondering about the psychology of it, because it could be that, yes, you bench someone and there's negative reinforcement and now they're going to try harder or something. Or it could be that now they're going to be thinking about their shot. They're going to be second guessing themselves. And then maybe that's going to interfere with this kind of Zen-like focus that you're talking about.
You know, everything's in perspective. Everything's relative. And so when it comes to Buddy, people say inconsistent, but like Buddy is a 40% three-point shooter on crazy high volume. So inconsistent to him might look like, you know, because he can hit these peaks. Now, you know, Steph can hit these peaks, but you don't get a lot of the valleys. And so, you know, but Buddy is who he is. He's an acquired taste. And if you want Buddy to be Clay, Buddy's not going to be Clay. Or if you want Buddy to be Steph, he's not going to be Steph. But like, he's one of the best shooters in the world. And yes, he is inconsistent. And it seems like he's inconsistent because he can hit these peaks that are just out of control high. They're rarity. They're rare. He's top 5 in the world in terms of like shooting the basketball. Within a team, everything is about like what you're getting paid, where you stand in the hierarchy of the team, what your role is. So it might be that like there are discussions where it's like, hey, buddy, like this is what we're looking at, you know, 8 minutes in this stretch, 4 minutes in this stretch, 8 minutes here. And then if you got to go and you're going to close, or you know, it's going to be 6 here, 6 here, 6 here, and that might be the end of it. Like there might be discussions like that. Like plenty of guys have it laid out where they're going to play and where they're not going to play. And it might be that like, hey, look, if you got to go and we're leaning in, and if not, we're probably going to go this direction. So like that's a real thing. And yes, I think probably people can be too harsh when it comes to bench his ass if he doesn't have it going, because he can get it going. And if he gets it going, we talked about, you know, they have a North Star, which is Steph. So if he gets it going and he pulls gravity to him because you don't want to give him a shot, now you're playing 3-on-2. And the more space you can give NBA players to not only play like 3-on-3, but even 3-on-2, that's like guaranteed buckets. So yeah, there's, you know, pros and cons to the Buddy Hield experience, but it is an experience all in onto itself. It's very unique.
It almost feels like people trying to time the market. Like let's say he starts off 0 for 4, but I feel like if there were 4 good shots to take, then that's just life. For a while, there was some amazing statistic. There was something like, if Buddy scores more than 14 points, the Warriors win. If he scores fewer than 14, they will lose. More or less something like that. Marc, thank you for spending the time with me, and I hope you don't mind. I'm going to bother you to come talk to me again in the future.
Yeah,
this is really great.
This was a blast. Thanks for having me, Eric.
For more of Marc Campbell, he has a Substack and podcast named Low Man Help. It's great stuff. I really enjoyed reading the pieces. And he goes into detail breaking down the development plan for Malik Beasley. And he's often found as a co-host on the All NBA podcast with Tim Legler. So he's all over the place. I'll put the links in the description. Thanks, Marc. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. And if you didn't enjoy this video, I promise I'll do better next time.